Wife threatened to take everything in divorce. Unless I agree that her ex lived with us, but I suspected it and already moved assets offshore. She got the debt instead. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a doozy. Never thought I'd be the guy posting his life's train wreck online, but here we are. Sometimes you gotta share the chaos just to make sense of it all. Plus, some of you magnificent bastards might get a kick out of how this played out. So I, 38 male, and my soon-to-be ex-wife is 35 female. We'll call her Sarah. Been married 8 years, no kids, thank God, because what you're about to read would have made custody battles a nightmare from hell. Sarah works in marketing for some tech startup that burns through investor money faster than she burns through my patience. I'm in cybersecurity consulting, which means I make decent money, and more importantly for this story, I understand how to make things disappear digitally. Keep that little detail in mind. It's gonna be important later. We met at a mutual friend's wedding back in 2015. Yeah, the irony isn't lost on me that our relationship started at someone else's happily ever after, and ended with me nuking her financial future. Sarah was this bubbly, ambitious woman who seemed to have her shit together. Great career trajectory, funny as hell, smart enough to hold her own in any conversation. Everything looked perfect on paper. Should have known that was the first red flag. Nothing's ever perfect on paper unless someone's lying on the application. The first few years were actually solid. We bought a house in a nice suburb, 4-bedroom colonial, decent neighborhood, the whole American dream package. We took vacations to Europe, did the whole young professional couple thing. Sarah was climbing the corporate ladder. I was building my consulting business. Life was good, or at least I thought it was. But here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean holy shit. How did I not see this train wreck coming? About 2 years ago, Sarah started talking about her ex-boyfriend Derek a lot more. Now, I'm not the jealous type. Never have been. Your partner's gonna have a past. That's life. We're all adults here. But when someone starts bringing up their ex in casual conversation 3 times a week, that's when your radar should start pinging like a submarine in enemy waters. Derek was Sarah's college boyfriend from way back. They dated for 4 years, lived together, the whole 9 yards. According to Sarah's version of events, he was brilliant but unstable. Her exact words. Apparently, he'd had some mental health struggles. Couldn't hold down a job for more than 6 months. And their relationship ended when Sarah got tired of supporting a grown man who spent his days playing video games and talking about his big ideas that never materialized into actual income. Fair enough. We've all got exes who didn't work out. Hell, I've got a few myself that I wouldn't want to run into at the grocery store. The weird part was how often Derek's name started popping up in conversation. Derek always said, or, you remind me of something Derek used to do. Or my personal favorite, Derek had this theory about. At first, I figured she was just processing old memories or whatever. People do that sometimes when they're feeling nostalgic. Maybe she'd seen something on social media that reminded her of their time together. No big deal, right? Wrong. Then Sarah started mentioning that Derek had been reaching out. Apparently, he'd gotten his act together. Found a job in graphic design, started therapy, joined a gym, the whole redemption arc bullshit. She'd run into him at a coffee shop near her work, and they'd caught up for like 2 hours. Totally innocent, she assured me. Just 2 adults being mature about their past. I wasn't worried. Why would I be? Sarah and I were married. We owned a house together. We had a life. Some ex-boyfriend with a history of instability and unemployment wasn't exactly keeping me up at night. I had bigger things to worry about, like landing new clients and keeping our business accounts healthy. But then Derek started becoming a more frequent topic of conversation. Sarah would show me his Instagram posts about his new job or his therapy breakthroughs. She'd mention funny texts he'd sent her about some meme or current event. She started suggesting we should all hang out sometime because it would be good for everyone to move past any weirdness. Now, I'm a pretty laid-back guy, but I'm not a complete fucking idiot. When your wife starts pushing for group hangs with her ex, that's usually not a great sign. It's like when someone says, we need to talk. Nothing good ever follows those words. But I figured I'd play along, see where this was heading. Sometimes you gotta let people show you exactly who they are. The 3 of us met for dinner at some trendy restaurant downtown that served tiny portions on huge plates for astronomical prices. Derek was exactly what I expected. Mid-30s, still dressing like he's in college, lots of big talk about disrupting the design industry and finding his authentic self. The kind of guy who uses journey as a verb unironically and thinks trauma dumping on strangers makes him deep and interesting. He spent most of dinner talking about how grateful he was to Sarah for believing in him during his dark period and how much her support had meant to him. Sarah ate it up, nodding along like he was dropping profound wisdom instead of recycled therapy speak you could find on any self-help Instagram account. The whole thing felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly why. Derek wasn't openly hitting on Sarah or anything. He was polite to me, asked about my work, seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. But there was this underlying vibe, like he was auditioning for something, like he was interviewing to be part of our lives. After dinner, Sarah was practically glowing. She kept talking about how proud she was of Derek's progress and how good it felt to have closure on that relationship. She suggested we make it a regular thing, monthly dinners to stay connected as friends. That's when I started paying closer attention to the details. Sarah's texting habits changed first. She'd always been pretty open with her phone. We never had trust issues, never snooped on each other's messages. But suddenly she was taking calls in other rooms and tilting her screen away when Derek's name popped up. When I'd ask what they were talking about, she'd get vague. Oh, just work stuff, or he's having some friendship drama. The frequency increased too. What started as occasional catch-up texts became daily conversations. Sarah would laugh at her phone during dinner, then immediately explain it was something funny Derek had sent. She started mentioning his opinions on movies, politics, whatever, always positioned as this brilliant insight I should definitely hear. Derek made this really good point about the housing crisis, she'd say. Or, Derek recommended this documentary about corporate corruption. Always Derek this, Derek that. Like suddenly her ex-boyfriend had become this fountain of wisdom on every topic under the sun. I'm in cybersecurity, remember? Pattern recognition is literally my job. I get paid to spot anomalies, identify threats, and predict what bad actors are going to do before they do it. And the pattern here was pretty fucking clear. My wife was developing an emotional affair with her ex-boyfriend, and he was laying groundwork for something bigger. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started doing what I do best, gathering intelligence. Sarah's laptop was password protected, but she'd had the same password for our entire relationship. Her browser history showed frequent visits to Derek's social media profiles, not just casual checks, but deep dives through months of posts. She'd been Googling articles about friendship after relationships and navigating complex emotions and how to help someone with anxiety. She'd also been researching apartments in our area, specifically one-bedroom places that could accommodate a roommate situation, places with flexible lease terms and furnished options. Her text messages with Derek painted a picture of a guy who was slowly escalating emotional intimacy while positioning himself as needing help. He was having trouble with his lease, struggling financially despite the new job, dealing with anxiety about living alone. His therapist had apparently suggested he needed a more stable living situation to continue his healing journey. Sarah was offering advice, emotional support, and increasingly personal details about our relationship. She'd told Derek about our mortgage payments, my income, our investment accounts. She'd complained about my work hours, my travel schedule, how I sometimes got stressed about money. She'd shared intimate details about our sex life, how often, what I liked, what left her unsatisfied. Reading those messages was like getting punched in the gut repeatedly. My wife was essentially giving her ex-boyfriend a complete blueprint of our marriage, including all the weak spots he could exploit. The real kicker? Derek had been asking about me. What I did for work, how much money I made, what our house was worth, whether I traveled for business, what my hobbies were. Sarah, being helpful, had answered all his questions. She'd essentially given him a full financial profile of our marriage and a personality assessment of her husband. That's when I knew for sure this wasn't some innocent reunion between old friends. Derek was running a long con, and Sarah was either completely oblivious or actively participating. Either way, I needed to start protecting myself. I started moving assets immediately. See, one advantage of working in cybersecurity is that you learn a lot about financial privacy and asset protection. I'd always kept our finances organized but separate, joint accounts for household expenses like mortgage, utilities, and groceries, but individual accounts for our personal spending and professional expenses. Sarah had never shown much interest in the details, which made this easier. Over the course of 3 months, I quietly moved money offshore, opened accounts in countries with strong banking privacy laws, converted assets into cryptocurrency, created a network of LLCs that would be nearly impossible to trace even with forensic accounting. I didn't clean out our joint accounts. That would have been too obvious. But anything that was technically mine, anything from my business or my personal inheritance, went into secure, hidden accounts. I also started documenting everything. Screenshots of Sarah's text messages, recordings of her phone calls with Derek, perfectly legal in our state with one-party consent laws, Financial records showing how much I'd contributed to our shared assets versus what she'd put in. Bank statements, mortgage payments, utility bills. Everything that would matter in a divorce proceeding. If this was heading where I thought it was, I wanted to be prepared for war. Meanwhile, Derek's problems were escalating right on schedule. His lease situation got more desperate by the week. He was having panic attacks about living alone. Apparently, his anxiety was triggered by isolation. His therapy had revealed that he needed a stable support system to continue his healing journey. Sarah was getting more and more involved in trying to solve his housing crisis. She started staying late after work to help Derek look at apartments online. She'd come home with stories about how difficult the rental market was, how expensive everything had gotten, how hard it was for someone with Derek's credit history to find a decent place. The first direct suggestion came about 6 months into this whole shit show. Sarah brought it up casually over dinner, like it was no big deal. So Derek's lease is up next month, and he's really struggling to find a place he can afford, she said, not looking up from her salad. I was thinking, maybe he could stay in our guest room for a few weeks, just until he gets back on his feet. I set down my fork and looked at her. Really looked at her, trying to read her expression. You want your ex-boyfriend to move into our house? It's not like that, she said quickly, finally making eye contact. He's a friend who needs help. We have the space, and it would just be temporary. How temporary? She shrugged like we were discussing what to watch on Netflix. A month? 2 at most. Just until he finds something suitable. And what does Derek think about this generous offer? He's really grateful for the idea, but he doesn't want to impose. He suggested paying rent, maybe helping with groceries and utilities. It could actually save us money. Of course he did. The guy who couldn't afford his own place was suddenly offering to contribute financially to ours. Real generous with money he didn't have, and real convenient that his contribution would make him a tenant with rights instead of just a house guest we could kick out any time. Let me think about it, I said. That night, Sarah was unusually affectionate. Lots of touching, compliments about what a good person I was. How much it would mean to her if I agreed to help Derek. She even initiated sex for the first time in weeks, which should have been a red flag the size of a fucking billboard. The full manipulation playbook was in effect. Over the next few days, I told her I needed more details before making a decision. How long exactly would this arrangement last? What would the financial terms look like? What about boundaries and house rules? What if Derek brought dates over? What about our privacy as a married couple? Sarah got defensive with every question. Why was I making such a big deal about helping someone in need? Derek wasn't some stranger. He was important to her, and wasn't it natural to want to help people you care about? Why was I being so suspicious and controlling? That's when I knew for sure. Sarah wasn't just emotionally involved with Derek. She was actively working to get him into our house. This wasn't about helping a friend in crisis. This was about positioning her ex-boyfriend as a permanent fixture in our life, probably as a stepping stone to something more. I started pushing back with more practical questions. Where would Derek work from home when I had client calls? How would we handle bathroom schedules with 3 adults? What about guests and entertaining? What if Derek's mental health issues became a problem? What if he couldn't find a place after the temporary period ended? Sarah had answers for everything, which told me she'd already thought this through extensively. Derek was very respectful of boundaries and wouldn't interfere with my work. He'd mostly keep to himself during business hours. He traveled for work sometimes, so he wouldn't always be around. And besides, wasn't it good to have some variety in our social life? Some new energy in the house? New energy. That's what she called it. Like our marriage was a dying battery that needed a jumpstart from her ex-boyfriend. The more I questioned the arrangement, the more agitated Sarah got. She started accusing me of being selfish, unsympathetic, closed-minded, paranoid. Didn't I care about people less fortunate than us? Wasn't I supposed to support her friendships and her values? Why was I making this about Derek being her ex instead of just seeing him as a human being who needed help? Then came the escalation tactics. Derek's really struggling right now, Sarah said one night after another dinner, where she'd barely eaten. Too busy texting him under the table. His mental health isn't great, and he's feeling really isolated. I'm worried about him. Ah, the mental health card. Nothing shuts down reasonable objections faster than implying someone might hurt themselves if you don't give them what they want. What kind of struggling? I asked, though I already knew this was emotional blackmail. He's been having dark thoughts. He told me he doesn't see much point in going on if he can't find stability somewhere. He feels like everyone's abandoned him. There it was. Sarah was essentially saying that if I didn't let Derek move in, I'd be responsible for his potential self-harm. Real classy manipulation tactic. But I played along. That sounds serious. Maybe he should be in a more structured environment? like a treatment facility or supervised housing? Sarah got angry at that suggestion. He doesn't need to be locked up somewhere. He just needs people who care about him. He needs a stable living situation with supportive friends. Friends like you. Yes, friends like me. And hopefully friends like you too, if you'd give him a chance instead of being so suspicious and judgmental. The conversation kept escalating over the next few weeks. Derek's situation got more desperate by the day, according to Sarah's reports. He was couch surfing with various friends, but those arrangements kept falling through because apparently nobody could handle his anxiety and depression. He was having panic attacks at work. His performance was suffering. His therapy wasn't helping because he couldn't focus on healing while dealing with housing insecurity. Sarah started staying out later, having emergency phone calls with Derek, where she'd pace around our backyard talking in hushed tones. She'd come home stressed and upset, talking about how guilty she felt for having a stable home while Derek was struggling. She started making pointed comments about how lucky we were to have space and resources that we weren't using to help people. The guilt campaign was relentless and obvious. Then Derek started showing up at our house. It started small. Sarah would invite him over for dinner because he's been eating nothing but fast food living out of his car. He'd stay late, talking about his struggles and his gratitude for our kindness. He'd compliment the house, mention how peaceful it felt, how healing it was to be around stable, supportive people like us. Sarah would practically glow when Derek praised our home or our hospitality, She'd make elaborate meals when he was coming over, stuff she hadn't cooked for me in months. She'd clean the house top to bottom, dress up like we were having important company instead of hosting a homeless ex-boyfriend. Derek started leaving things behind. A phone charger here, a book there, a change of clothes for when he inevitably stayed too late to drive safely. Sarah would suggest he just sleep on the couch rather than risk driving while tired or emotionally overwhelmed. Before long, Derek was sleeping over 2 or 3 nights a week. I watched this whole thing unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Sarah was essentially moving Derek into our house without my explicit consent, creating a fait accompli that would be harder to reverse once it became the status quo. The classic boiling frog technique. But I let it happen. I needed to see how far Sarah would push this before dropping the real ultimatum I knew was coming. During this period, I also noticed changes in Sarah's behavior beyond just the Derek situation. She started criticizing me more. Little comments about my clothes, my hobbies, my friends. She'd compare me unfavorably to Derek in subtle ways. Derek was more emotionally available. Derek was more interested in social justice. Derek was more spontaneous and fun. She started pulling away physically too. Sex became infrequent and mechanical when it happened at all. She'd turn away when I tried to touch her casually, claim she was tired or stressed when I initiated affection. But she'd light up like a Christmas tree whenever Derek texted or called. The dynamic in our house shifted completely. Sarah and Derek would have long conversations about art, politics, philosophy, subjects she'd never shown much interest in with me. They'd watch movies together while I worked in my office. They'd cook together, sharing inside jokes and memories from their college days. I was becoming a stranger in my own home, watching my wife reconnect with her ex-boyfriend while treating me like an inconvenient roommate. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in November. Derek had been temporarily staying with us for about 3 weeks at that point, and the temporary arrangement was feeling pretty fucking permanent. Sarah and I were in the kitchen after Derek had gone to bed, and she was making her case for formalizing the arrangement. "Derek's really settled in well," she said, loading the dishwasher with dishes from another elaborate meal she'd made for him. "He's been so helpful around the house, and he's contributing financially. I think this could be a really positive situation for all of us. What exactly are you proposing?" "Well, instead of him just crashing here occasionally, maybe we could make it official. He could move into the guest room permanently, pay a third of the mortgage and utilities, help with groceries and household maintenance. It would actually save us money and give us built-in help with house projects. Save us money by adding a third person to our household expenses? His contribution would more than cover his share of everything. Plus, he's handy. He could help with maintenance and repairs. And it would be good for our relationship too. Less pressure on us to be each other's only social outlet. Our relationship needed a third wheel to take pressure off? That was news to me. What if I'm not comfortable with this arrangement?" I asked. Sarah stopped loading dishes and turned to face me, and I could see she'd been preparing for this question. "Why wouldn't you be comfortable? Derek's been nothing but respectful and helpful. He's clean, quiet, he contributes financially, and he's become a good friend to both of us. He's your ex-boyfriend, Sarah. You dated for 4 years. You lived together. You were in love with him. And now you want him to live with us permanently? That's ancient history. We're all adults here. People can be friends after a relationship ends, especially when they've both grown and changed. Can they? Because it seems like you two have been getting awfully close lately, closer than I'd expect from friends. Sarah's face went red, and I could see her switching to attack mode. Are you accusing me of something? I'm asking you to consider how this looks, how it feels. You're prioritizing your ex-boyfriend's needs over your husband's comfort. Derek is not just some ex-boyfriend. He's someone I care about who needs help. And honestly, your refusal to even consider helping him says a lot about your character. There it was. My character was in question because I wouldn't let her ex move in permanently. The argument escalated from there. Sarah accused me of being jealous, controlling, selfish, and small-minded. She said I was stuck in outdated ideas about relationships and couldn't handle her having close male friendships. I pointed out that she was asking me to fundamentally alter our living situation to accommodate someone she used to sleep with, and that most reasonable people would have serious concerns about that. You're being paranoid and possessive, she said. Derek and I are friends, that's it. But you can't see past your own insecurity to recognize that he's a good person who deserves support. If Derek's such a good friend, why don't you help him find his own place? Why does he need to live here specifically? Because he needs stability and support, not just money. He needs people who believe in him and care about his well-being. People like you. Yes, people like me. And ideally people like you too, if you could get over your jealousy long enough to see what kind of person he really is. The conversation went in circles for another hour. Sarah kept painting me as the unreasonable one, the guy who was too selfish and insecure to help someone in need. I kept pointing out that her friend was her ex-boyfriend, and this arrangement would make me deeply uncomfortable in my own home. Finally, Sarah played her ace card. Fine, she said, throwing down the dish towel like she was done with the whole conversation. If that's how you feel, maybe we need to reconsider this whole marriage. And there was the threat I'd been waiting for. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe we're not as compatible as I thought. Maybe I married someone who can't support my friendships or understand my values. Your values include prioritizing your ex-boyfriend over your husband? My values include helping people I care about and not letting jealousy control my decisions. And if you can't handle that, then maybe we shouldn't be married. Sarah let that sit for a minute, watching my face for a reaction. She thought she had me cornered. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, she continued. About what I want from life, what kind of person I want to be with. Derek and I have been talking, and he's helped me realize that I've been compromising parts of myself to fit into this marriage. Derek had been helping her realize things about our marriage. Of course he fucking had. What kind of things? I used to be more spontaneous, more open to new experiences. I used to care about social justice and helping people. But being with you, I feel like I've become more conservative, more focused on material things and security. Material things like our house, our financial stability, the comfortable life we've built together. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Everything comes down to money and possessions with you. Derek reminded me that there are more important things in life than accumulating wealth. Derek, who couldn't afford his own rent and was freeloading off married couples, was lecturing my wife about the unimportance of financial stability. Real fucking rich. Over the next few days, the threats became more explicit. Sarah started talking about how unhappy she'd been in our marriage, how she felt stifled and unfulfilled. She mentioned that she'd been looking at apartments, thinking about what a separation might look like. But here's the kicker. She wanted to try a trial separation where she kept living in our house with Derek while I moved out, just to see how it felt to have some space from our marriage and explore what kind of person she really was without my influence. When I pointed out that this sounded less like a separation and more like me moving out so she could play house with her ex, Sarah got furious. This is exactly the kind of thinking that's destroying our marriage, she said. You can't see past your own jealousy and possessiveness. Derek and I are friends. That's it. But you're so insecure that you can't handle me having a close male friendship. A close male friendship where he lives in our house, contributes to our mortgage, and you discuss intimate details of our marriage with him? I don't discuss intimate details with Derek. That was a flat-out lie, and we both knew it. I'd seen the text messages where Sarah complained about our sex life, our financial disagreements, my work schedule, my supposedly controlling behavior. Derek knew more about our marriage than most couples therapists do. The ultimatum came the following week, delivered with all the subtlety of a brick through a window. Sarah sat me down for what she called a serious conversation about our future. She'd been doing a lot of thinking, she said, about what she wanted from life, about whether our marriage was serving both of us, about what changes might be necessary for her to be truly happy. I love you, she started, which is how you know someone's about to say something that proves they don't. But I think we've grown in different directions. I've become more focused on community and helping others. You've become more focused on security and material success. Those aren't mutually exclusive things, Sarah. Maybe not, but they seem to be for us. Every time I want to help someone or try something new, you shut it down with practical concerns and worst-case scenarios. Practical concerns like not wanting my wife's ex-boyfriend to move into our house permanently? See? You can't even discuss this without making it about jealousy and possession. Derek is a friend who needs help, but you can't see past the fact that we used to date. Sarah took a deep breath and delivered what she thought was going to be her winning argument. I want Derek to move in permanently. I want us to try an alternative living arrangement that's more open and community-focused. I want you to be part of that, but if you can't handle it, then maybe we need to end this marriage. You're threatening divorce if I don't let your ex-boyfriend move in? I'm telling you what I need to be happy and fulfilled in this relationship. If you can't give me that, then yes, maybe we should get divorced. Sarah seemed to think she had me cornered. She'd positioned the conversation so that any reasonable objection I had was evidence of my jealousy and controlling nature. Either I agreed to her ridiculous demand, or I was the bad guy who destroyed our marriage over petty insecurity. She thought I'd cave. She thought I'd choose to keep her rather than lose everything we'd built together. But here's the thing about ultimatums. They only work if the other person is afraid of the consequences. Okay, I said calmly. Let's get divorced. Sarah blinked like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. What? You heard me. If you think our marriage is so fundamentally broken that the only solution is moving your ex-boyfriend into our house, then yeah, let's end it. That's not... I didn't mean... I was hoping we could work through this together. Work through what? You've made it clear that your relationship with Derek is more important than your marriage to me. You've given me an ultimatum. Accept him living here or lose you. So I'm choosing option C. Lose you both. Sarah started backpedaling immediately. She'd been hoping I'd capitulate, agree to the living arrangement to save the marriage. The idea that I might actually call her bluff hadn't occurred to her. Maybe we could try counseling first, she suggested, suddenly looking panicked. So we can have a therapist explain to me why I should be comfortable with your ex-boyfriend living in our house? So you can have a professional validate your position that I'm being unreasonable? So we can work on our communication issues and find a compromise that works for everyone. Our communication seems pretty clear to me. You want to choose Derek over me. I'm choosing not to stick around for that show. That night, Sarah barely slept. She kept trying to restart the conversation, suggesting compromises that weren't really compromises. Maybe Derek could just stay during the week and find somewhere else on weekends. Maybe we could set up clearer boundaries about shared spaces. Maybe I'd feel better about it if I got to know Derek better as a person, instead of just seeing him as a threat. But I'd made up my mind. Or rather, Sarah had made it up for me when she decided her ex was more important than her husband. The next morning, I told Sarah I'd contacted a divorce attorney. "You're serious about this?" she asked, looking genuinely shocked. Dead serious. That's when Sarah switched tactics completely. The woman who'd been talking about our incompatibility and her need for fulfillment suddenly became very interested in preserving our marriage. "I didn't realize how strongly you felt about this," she said. "Maybe Derek doesn't need to move in permanently. Maybe we could help him find another living situation that would work better for everyone." But it was too late for that reasonable approach. Sarah had shown me exactly how she prioritized our relationship, and it wasn't at the top of the list. "The issue isn't Derek," I told her. "The issue is that you were willing to threaten our marriage to get what you wanted. You were prepared to blow up 8 years together, rather than respect my completely reasonable boundaries. I wasn't threatening anything. I was trying to communicate my needs and find a solution that would work for all of us. By saying you'd leave me if I didn't agree to those needs?" Sarah realized she'd backed herself into a corner. She'd played hardball and lost, and now she was trying to minimize the damage. "Can't we just table the Derek situation and work on us?" she asked. "Focus on rebuilding our relationship without outside complications?" "There is no us anymore, Sarah. You made that choice when you decided Derek was more important than our marriage." That's when Sarah got really desperate. She started crying, talking about how much our relationship meant to her, how she'd made a terrible mistake, how she was just trying to help a friend and didn't realize how it looked from my perspective. But I was done. Done with the crying, done with the manipulation, done with being asked to compromise my marriage to accommodate her ex-boyfriend's needs. I moved out that weekend, found a furnished apartment on a month-to-month lease while the divorce proceedings got underway. Here's where Sarah's brilliant plan really fell apart. See, while she'd been focused on getting Derek moved in and threatening me with divorce, I'd been quietly documenting everything and securing our assets. When it came time to divide our property, Sarah discovered that her husband wasn't quite the financial pushover she'd thought I was. Our house? Mortgaged to the hilt. I'd taken out a home equity loan 6 months earlier, ostensibly for renovations that never happened. The money had gone into offshore accounts that Sarah knew nothing about. Our joint savings? Depleted by various business investments that existed only on paper. Cryptocurrency purchases, consulting fees to shell companies, equipment purchases for my business. All legitimate expenses that happened to move money from joint accounts into accounts only I controlled. Sarah's name wasn't on any of my business accounts, retirement funds, or investment portfolios. Everything she thought we owned together was either leveraged, debt-ridden, or held in structures she couldn't touch. Meanwhile, all the debt we'd accumulated, credit cards, car loans, the new mortgage on our house, that was all jointly held. Sarah was responsible for half of everything we owed, but had no access to most of what we actually owned. Derek, who'd been so eager to move in and contribute to our household expenses, suddenly wasn't as interested in helping with Sarah's financial obligations post-divorce. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Sarah kept expecting me to be reasonable, to work out some kind of amicable settlement that would let us both move on with our lives in comfort. Instead, she got a forensic accountant and a paper trail that made it clear she was getting exactly what she'd asked for: freedom from our marriage, plus half the debt we'd accumulated together. Sarah tried everything. She claimed I'd hidden assets. I had, but proving it would take longer than she could afford. She argued that I'd manipulated our finances to screw her over in the divorce. Technically true, but also technically legal. She even suggested that we try counseling to work things out. Too little, too late, sweetheart. Her lawyer advised her to settle quickly, rather than rack up more legal fees fighting a battle she probably couldn't win. The forensic accounting alone was going to cost her more than she'd get from any assets she might be able to claim. Derek, faced with the reality of Sarah's new financial situation, decided his housing crisis wasn't quite desperate enough to warrant moving in with a newly divorced woman who was drowning in debt. Funny how quickly his mental health needs disappeared when Sarah stopped being a financial asset and became a liability. His anxiety about living alone suddenly became manageable when it turned out his other option was sharing a studio apartment with a bitter ex-wife who couldn't afford to keep the lights on. The final divorce decree left Sarah with about $95,000 in debt, a mortgage she couldn't afford on her salary alone, and the realization that her brilliant plan to upgrade from her boring husband to her exciting ex-boyfriend had backfired spectacularly. 6 months post-divorce, Sarah had to sell the house at a loss to pay down the debt. Derek was long gone, apparently having found another supportive friend to help with his ongoing housing issues. Sarah moved into a studio apartment across town and deleted most of her social media accounts,